Okay, well, hello and welcome to this Innovation Forum webinar, where we'll be discussing the progress towards deforestation and conversion-free supply chains in collaboration with the Accountability Framework Initiative. I'm Ian Welsh and I'll be your host for the next hour or so. 2025, milestone year for corporate action on deforestation and ecosystem conversion. As companies with agriculture and forestry supply chains approach 2025 target dates, there is a growing urgency to deliver on commitments and demonstrate progress. In this webinar, the Accountability Framework Initiative and Innovation Forum, we will explain what meaningful action looks like in the months ahead and beyond. Now, to help frame our discussion, we have an expert panel. I'm joined by Jeff Milder, Director of the Accountability Framework Initiative, Hilary Frenrich, Global Manager, Nature and Water Strategy at McDonald's, Roshan Mortimer, Global Sustainability and Stakeholder Engagement Manager at COFCO International. Now, I'll turn to our panel shortly, but we do want to hear from all of you. So please be thinking about points and questions that you would like me to put to our panel and write them in the Q&A box on your Zoom window. Please note your name and organisation when putting your question. You can, of course, like others' questions by clicking the thumbs up, and the more likes, the greater the chances that I will put that question to the panel. We're recording the webinar, and we will be sharing the recordings with everybody in due course. Okay, let's go. Jeff, welcome. Why is 2025 such a pivotal year for corporate action on deforestation and ecosystem conversion?
Thanks, Ian, and good day to everyone. Before answering that, I'd just like to provide a brief background about the Accountability Framework Initiative, the AFI. We're a collaborative initiative led by a coalition of about 24 environmental and human rights organizations from around the world. Our goal is to bring about responsible supply chains in agriculture and forestry worldwide, and we focus on the issues of deforestation and ecosystem conversion and their related impacts for climate and nature, as well as the human rights of Indigenous peoples, local communities, and workers. Our core product is the Accountability Framework, and it reflects the consensus of our full coalition. The framework provides a practical roadmap for companies to set goals, take action, and measure and report progress towards responsible supply chains. And beyond providing guidance for companies, the framework is also now baked into many different industry guidelines, market requirements, accountability mechanisms, and tools, among others. So it's helped to establish alignment sector-wide. The framework is free for everyone, and you can find it on our website. So let me now answer your question, Ian, digging into today's topic. What makes 2025 a milestone year for corporate action on halting deforestation? In addition to, of course, the urgency of this issue, 2025 has been adopted widely as a target date for eliminating deforestation and ecosystem conversion from supply chains in the agri-food sector. For instance, under the Science-Based Targets Initiative, SBTI, companies that set targets covering forest, land, and agriculture are required to have a no deforestation commitment with a 2025 target date. So far, more than 260 companies have done so, and this is on top of the many companies that already had similar targets. This is also the year when companies that are subject to the EU Deforestation Regulation, EUDR, will need to implement and comply with that law. So reflecting on this milestone year so far, first, it's important to recognize the progress that has been made. For instance, last year, together with CDP, we reported that 64 companies had disclosed that at least one of their major commodity supply chains was 100% deforestation or conversion-free, and they could provide evidence of this based on standardized methods aligned with the accountability framework. These types of achievements are recognized and celebrated by civil society voices such as the AFI. But 2025 is also presenting some tricky challenges and questions. One that we hear a lot is, what happens if my company or my business partner does not fully achieve its no deforestation commitment by its target date? Also, how can we expand ambition and engage many more companies in making no deforestation commitments post-2025, especially against today's backdrop of green hushing? And what can we learn from our last big milestone year, that was 2020, to make sure that we do better this time around? Amid questions like these, our goal here at the AFI is to provide clear and consensus-based guidelines so that companies have the clarity and confidence to act. In that vein, last month we published a statement on 2025 target dates, and I'd like to briefly share its main messages, which will help to set the scene for the remainder of today's conversation. So first, 2025 is still less than halfway over, so it's essential that companies prioritize progress towards deforestation-free supply chains throughout the rest of the year. This includes addressing the compliance of sourced products using mechanisms such as traceability and procurement practices, but also addressing risk and impact at the level of suppliers and sourcing areas. That's what makes a no deforestation strategy durable, because those suppliers and sourcing areas are your future supply base, and also the scale at which many risks and impacts are best addressed. Second, if your company has a 2025 target date, this should be retained in public view at least through the end of the 2025 disclosure cycle, which is often around a year past the end of the reporting year, or even a bit more. After this point, if the commitment was met, then that's great. The future course is about sustaining that achievement level as the business and its context evolve over time. If the commitment was not fully met, then the company should publicly communicate the gaps towards full achievement, the measures being taken to address these gaps, and timeframes for doing so. Sometimes there are valid reasons for gaps, and in any case, this transparency is what enables stakeholders to understand the target dates were not abandoned and that gaps are being expeditiously addressed. Third, the AFI calls on all companies to have strong no deforestation policies in alignment with the accountability framework. These should be as ambitious as possible in terms of timeframe, and we provide guidelines for what this means, but we don't name any one specific year. Companies need to determine that based on the context of their business. We've also published some additional guidance on what it means to fulfill a no deforestation commitment that includes appropriate nuance and consideration of business dynamics over time. We think that this provides a realistic basis for setting new commitments post-2025, and that will help the no deforestation concept pass muster internally with companies, including legal review, without diluting or weakening the concept itself. One of the lessons learned over the past years is that it can be hard to gauge progress and course correct when needed, when the main point of orientation is around target dates that are several years in the future. Based on this learning, we're now placing greater emphasis on more bite-sized steps, which can be specified as short-term milestones with corresponding action plans. This structure is one that's increasingly used to support ongoing engagement by commodity buyers of their suppliers and by investors and lenders of their holdings and clients. Fourth and finally, disclosure continues to be essential. Earlier this year, the AFI published an update to its operational guidance on reporting, disclosure, and claims that provides full detail on this topic. A few highlights include the importance of disclosure covering the full scope of a company's production or sourcing, not limiting it to specific product lines, markets, or sourcing origins. And also to utilize standardized metrics, particularly quantitative metrics to report performance on traceability and % deforestation-free sourcing. This provides comparability and credibility from across time periods and between companies. These metrics, which are published by the Accountability Framework, have been fully incorporated into the CDP questionnaire and other leading reporting and assessment initiatives in this space. So putting this all together, there is a pathway here for every company to act, regardless of where they are on their journey and whether they currently have commitments or not. It reflects a level of urgency to address key challenges that we face as a society, but it's also an approach that we believe is realistic and appropriately sensitive to context. It asks companies to do what's necessary, but not what's impossible. Back to you, Ian.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for setting the scene so well. Can I ask you about short-term milestones? Interesting that you're recommending these are sort of bite-size milestones. What is a short-term milestone? How do you define a short-term milestone in this context?
An endpoint target or a target date is what it looks like when the commitment is fully achieved, a deforestation-free supply chain. Milestones are steps toward that. So they could be percentages or proportions of the supply chain where that level has been achieved. And they could also include specific interim steps or measures that are used to get there.
Okay, thanks very much, Jeff. Loads to go back to on that. I see we are already getting questions coming in. Thanks very much indeed. We'll come to those in very shortly. But first of all, I'd like to introduce and get some comments and thoughts from Hilary and from Roshan. Roshan, welcome back to Innovation Forum webinar. Love to see you again. Can you perhaps tell us about how you established your targets and commitments around deforestation and land conversion, and give us a bit of a snapshot in terms of your progress.
Sure. Thanks, Ian. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. And thanks, Jeff, for the scene setting. So yeah, I'm Roisin from COFCO International. Just very quickly to explain who we are. We are the international trading arm for the COFCO Group, which is China's biggest agricultural company. But we are a separate company with our own headquarters based in Geneva, and we do a lot of international trading on grains and oilseeds. So a lot of soy and corn relevant to this conversation. Coffee, sugar, cotton, and maritime freight. So in response to your question, Ian, for us, it really started with the agri-sector roadmap, which a lot of the trading companies signed back at COP26, and it was a CEO statement at that time, and this really gave us, that was really the point where our CEO recognized that this is something that we need to do, and it gave us the mandate to go ahead and set our SBTi targets. And so we had a fairly straightforward path, I would say, to set those targets once we had that CEO buy-in on the roadmap. And when we set those targets, we could see that, well, of our total emissions, over 80% are flag emissions. Of our flag emissions, 99% are scope 3, and the vast majority are from land use change. So this combined with we recently updated our double materiality assessment aligned with the ESRS guidelines for the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And that double materiality assessment also put climate change mitigation and adaptation right at the top of the list. And we involved a lot of our lenders and banks in that assessment, and we put this assessment in front of our board. So that combination of factors of showing the board, the CEO, that this climate change adaptation and of which land use change, us being an agri-foods company, is a vast majority component. That all kind of gave us the mandate to then bring our target dates forward. We brought them forward earlier this year to be at 2025. So that's kind of how we got there. But then the fact that we only changed the dates earlier this year was really more a formalization, because we actually already achieved 99% deforestation conversion free for soy purchased in Brazil last year. So we have been working on this anyway. But those other aspects that I mentioned kind of enabled us to formalize what we've been working towards.
Thank you very much indeed. Hilary, I wonder if you could answer the same question. Talk us through how you establish your targets and commitments around deforestation and land conversion, and what's your progress look like?
Sure thing. Thanks, Dan, and great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. So in McDonald's history, essentially, we started work on forests in the 1980s, the early 1980s. I've dug through the archives myself. We have boxes and boxes, and you can actually see over the years how first there were handwritten letters around forests, and then it merged into typewriters, and now we're at computers and emails. And our first kind of public statement around this was in 1989, when we established our corporate policy statement that had to do with tropical rainforests and how we were working to protect rainforests as related to particularly beef in the Amazon. Since 1989, we had various commodity approaches. So we had everything from fiber to palm oil to soy for chicken feed. And that was kind of like almost a little like piece by piece, bite-sized chunks, as maybe Jeff would say, until 2014. So in 2014, we were at the New York Climate Week when we endorsed the New York Declaration on Forests in 2014, which was that movement where everyone came together, whether you were a government or private sector or an NGO, and said, you know, we are going to work to eliminate deforestation as quickly as we can. McDonald's was there, we endorsed it, and as our homework, we published our commitment on forests in 2015. Our commitment on forests is public. You can look it up right now if you're interested. And essentially what we do is we call out certain commodities where we are prioritizing action around eliminating deforestation and addressing conversion. This includes beef, this includes soy and chicken feed, palm, coffee, because we serve a lot of coffee around the world, and then packaging, and particularly guest-based packaging. So when you enter into a McDonald's, how do you know that not only your hamburger is considered supporting deforestation free, but also the package that it's in as well, guest-based packaging. And since 2015, we've had various milestones. So in 2020, for instance, we had our responsible sourcing milestones, kind of telling the world, like, how are we doing on this commitment on forests? And we report that out annually. We have our purpose and impact report, which can be seen as our corporate sustainability report, where we say, okay, every year, this is how we're doing on palm. This is how we're doing on beef. And I would encourage you to take a look at that. Last year, we had something that was really exciting, which is we updated our commitment. Previously, it was a commitment on forests around eliminating deforestation. And in September of last year, we published an updated commitment, which is commitment on forests and natural ecosystems, where through lots of guidance from the accountability framework and others like ProForest and WWF, we included addressing conversion in our commitment formally. Moving forward, we're going to continue to report out and strengthen our approach. And I think it's really important in terms of McDonald's. We know that there's over 42,000 restaurants around the world, but many of those restaurants are franchisee owned. So 95% of our restaurants are franchisee owned. And what that means is all of our work has to be really done in terms of partnership. We partner constantly with our franchisees as well as our suppliers within our legal limits. And this means that it's a huge effort and prioritization when you're thinking about these big wieldy commitments. And we try to be guided by data. So like, where is the imminent risk to natural ecosystems and as related to deforestation or human rights? What is possible to do right now and what is possible to work towards doing? And I think something else that's important is, like, oftentimes McDonald's is working 5+ layers back. So when you're thinking about trying to get to what's happening on the farm that is selling to a raw material supplier, for instance, that it's the farm that's selling to the raw material supplier, who's then selling to the finished product supplier, who's then selling to the distribution center, who's then selling to a McDonald's restaurant. And there's a lot of links there. And that's why working in collaboration is going to be so core and so important, and has really given us huge strides in the past. The only last thing that I'll mention is our team focuses a lot on the theory of change. So like, what is possible and how are we working towards sustainable transformation? This underpins everything that we do as related to our commitment on forests and natural ecosystems. And the way that we see it is deforestation in particular is so important to focus on because of the feedback cycle that exists. So maybe just walking us through that. If you have deforestation and you cut down those trees, what you essentially has is a reduced evapotranspiration. So there's less water going into the atmosphere and there's less rain. As there's less rain, there's decreased agricultural productivity. And oftentimes what that can unintentionally mean is that producers will look to gain their productivity by cutting down forests to increase and expand where they can grow. And so we see this feedback cycle as really important when we're thinking about business resiliency, because our business resiliency is fundamentally dependent on ecosystem resiliency, which is how producers have their resiliency. So I just wanted to bring the theory of change a little bit to the forefront, because that feedback cycle has outcomes on producers, that feedback cycle has outcomes on us as a business, and in addition to the ecosystem as well. So lots of years of history, but a lot more to do, and looking forward to partnering for that moving forward.
Thanks so much, Hilary. Roisin, I wondered, talk a little about interim milestones. How important for you are interim milestones?
Extremely important. I think Jeff said it very well around it. Really, milestones quite far in the future. You can imagine a trading company, things are happening by the hour. So things that are 5 years down the track, it's, even though it's also, companies also have a long-term strategy and they want to remain, viable and successful in the future. It is hard to grasp. And so I think those short-term milestones are absolutely key. They help us in the sustainability team understand how we're going. Are we really making progress? They help us communicate to internal stakeholders And then, of course, the external stakeholders, we have many external stakeholders contacting us very frequently, asking not just, have you made this commitment, or it's sort of these longer term questions, but most of the questions are really, well, how did you do in the last 6 months? What have you done to achieve progress in the past 6 or 12 months? And what are you doing in the next 6 to 12 months? And this is really helpful. This is how we can make progress. The other reason that it's also helpful is that you can then identify where you're doing well and maybe even exceeding expectations, and which does happen occasionally, and then also where you a bit slower than expected, or the strategy you put in place is not working as well as expected, and then it's a good way to be able to revisit and redesign before you're right at the target milestone. So yeah, for us they're really key. And I think, for example, I didn't mention maybe so much about our progress to date, and I won't call out a lot of numbers right now, because we just published our sustainability report last week, so you can always look at that, and there's some good highlights there. But some of the key progress linking to milestones is on the less quantitative factors, but things like securing commercial value from the work in sustainability and on meeting our targets. So things like sustainability linked loans with KPIs tied to targets. So we had a sustainability linked loan last year that was with OCBC Bank with KPIs linked to our Scope 3 flag emissions reductions for soy and corn. And this was a really good interim milestone for us, because it wasn't about meeting the targets, but it was about showing internal stakeholders that there are really key lenders that are interested in this topic. They're interested in supporting us on the journey to get there, and it helped. With the loan over the years, you have KPIs for each year, so then you really have these interim targets. Another example is just even it's a little bit less maybe sexy in the headlines, but just the internal work behind the scenes of setting up the right project management and things in place to be tracking those progress on those internal milestones. That's for us really core, and all the internal stakeholder engagement that happens behind the scenes is how we identify roadblocks along the way that we can very quickly address by having an open conversation, better understanding the challenges, and working out something together, which wouldn't happen if we only focused on this very big, which can be sometimes quite intimidating milestones years down the road.
Great, thanks very much indeed. Hilary, I wonder if you could perhaps give us some insight into a couple of things. What's proved reasonably straightforward getting to where you are, and what's been more challenging?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. So I think reasonably straightforward, and I wasn't at McDonald's when they originally set the commitment in 2015, but I would expect that it was reasonably straightforward which commodities we would choose to prioritize in our commitment on forests. I think it wouldn't be a great look if, for instance, McDonald's would not have prioritized beef, for instance. So I think that was reasonably probably straightforward for folks when we were thinking about that back in 2015. And I would also say that we've all seen the studies, and we know which commodities globally are driving deforestation at scale. I think what's more challenging is knowing, okay, so you've picked these commodities. What is best? What is doable? What is doable knowing that you are acting 5 steps back at all times? And how do you match the science and the data, which is always changing because there are supply chain dynamics that change. There is science, there's technology that is changing. How do you enable that match and enough flexibility to reach your commitments and scale? So there's this important element of ensuring that there's enough flexibility to meet your goals, but also that will change. What we were doing 10 years ago is not the same thing as we are doing now, and we should celebrate that because as industries progress, as folks learn more about their supply chains, as technologies are now progressing at a faster rate than they've ever progressed, you should expect that companies are also changing their approach because they can. And so it's something that we can't stand still on how we're progressing. And that does prove challenging because we need to somehow connect that narrative and the story on this is now why we're taking this approach instead, while making sure that we're fully transparent about that. I would also say one element that's been challenging, and we welcome thoughts and discussion around this always, is this idea of any company can have a public-facing commitment and work in close partnership with their suppliers on that commitment, is in addition to public-facing or internal procurement policies around deforestation. How do you make sure that that gets to the producer? I think that is the core question. When the sustainable transformation is fundamentally wrapped up in what a producer is doing on their own land, and when you're thinking about zero deforestation procurement policies, for instance, but you're recognizing that deforestation in many places in the world is legally permitted by national legislation, how do you bring the producer alongside? And when you're thinking about billions of consumers that we have, and we have millions of producers, what is the scalable impact where you can reach as many producers as possible? This is something that we've been doing for many years as close as we can. But I think we all collectively need to get closer to that producer to ensure that we're bringing the producer alongside with us when we make these big overarching goals and progressing with the producer and bringing them in as we are rapidly changing and working on sustainable transformation of production landscapes.
Thanks, Hilary. Roisin, just a similar question to you then. What's been more challenging than you expected, and what's been less challenging than you expected?
Yeah, so I'd say maybe on the less challenging than expected, I think, yeah, it's similar to Hilary's point. I think that, as I mentioned earlier, once we had that initial CEO buy-in on the roadmap, especially that seeing that the other traders, we were all committing to the same thing. This was, yeah, we then submitted our SBTi targets, and it was a lot of work. It's a robust framework, so we had a lot of work to do, but it was quite straightforward. And similar when we advanced our DCF date earlier this year, yeah, it was a lot of work to get the internal buy-in, but it was okay. So some of these, and even on the technical side, the traceability and monitoring, there's so many tools out there. There's a lot of guidance that AFI and others are working on. So yeah, even though it's challenging, it's somewhat straightforward. I think the biggest challenge is showing up in the Q&A, and is no surprise to anyone. It's really finding these solutions to the biggest challenge, which is how do you make this rewarding for our suppliers and rewarding for the producers that are being asked to do a lot and are being asked, especially by countries that don't have the same laws as them, or that have, the rules don't really apply the same way because they've deforested a long time ago. We all know that is the challenge. We're all working very hard to find solutions to that challenge. There's so many people working on this topic, and as COFCO, we're looking through different ways to be able to address this challenge and to have adapted solutions to different producing areas where they have different challenges. So things like the Soft Commodities Forum Farmer First Cluster, we're testing solutions there and seeing what works and doesn't work in terms of offering incentives to farmers in exchange for DCF commitment. We're also working on green finance solutions where we're seeing how can we, there's many investors that are interested in this as well. So how do we secure that green finance investment to offer lower interest rates to farmers or things that are interesting to them in exchange, again, for the DCF commitment. But I think this is really the biggest challenge that we're all facing at the moment across many different commodities, and that's still, there's not going to be one solution, but I'd say that there's not enough solutions that have been proven and have been finished the pilot and are in the scale-up phase today.
Okay, thank you. Turn to questions in a sec. Just one final thing I wanted to ask both Hilary and Roisin to comment on. So you talked a bit about using external initiatives, guidance. There's a lot of it around. How do you see you work your way through the noise, and how do you best use these external initiatives and guidelines? Hilary.
Thanks, Ian. So there's been a few external initiatives that have been particularly helpful for McDonald's recently. And one of those I would say is the Consumer Goods Forum, Forest Plaza Coalition. So the Consumer Goods Forum is 400 plus C-suite executives that are coming together and saying, we have shared challenges. What can we talk about to model best practices and learn from others? I co-lead the beef working group within that, sit on the soy working group. We sit a lot with Soft Commodities Forum, including Russian, on acting as an industry. What do we do? What is possible? That has been extraordinarily helpful. If you have questions on deforestation and conversion as showing up in the private sector and saying like, what is doable? Where do I start? I would strongly encourage you to look into CGF FPC as a great place to start. We need you and the planet needs you. We also co-lead the Human Rights Coalition within CGF. And the reason why I bring up human rights is because human rights is fundamentally baked into our commitment on forests and natural ecosystems. We know that impacts on forests are far-reaching and are impacting folks on the ground. So for instance, to give an example, UNICEF last year, for instance, when the Amazon was going through its droughts, said that there were almost 500,000 students that were out of school and didn't have access to healthcare. And the reason why is because the boats couldn't get through to bring those kids to school. And so kids are more vulnerable to other sorts of time, including conflict-prone time, when they are unable to get to school. And so we see preserving and safeguarding forests as fundamental for human rights as well as fundamental for other things like water. And so that means that we're also showing up in water spaces as well, and we're also showing up in human rights spaces. We also are very close to AFI. We think about AFI constantly. We're constantly referencing it. If you look at our website, our purpose and impact report, we have AFI all over that because it really enables us to say we have a common definition for XYZ thing, which allows us to start from the right starting point or from a certain starting point where there's additional industry alignment. And I would say lastly, something that's been really important for us over the years is the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, which started and kicked off. We were one of the founding members in 2012. And the reason why I bring up the GRSB is because it's so core to get that closer connect with those producers so they can be part of that sustainable transformation that we're all looking for. And the GRSB enables us to have that closer chance to talk with producers and see what are the local realities and how can we think about scale. There is a lot happening. There's a lot of technologies. We try to focus on those because that's where we see significant impact and progress, and also those shared challenges and modeling best practices and constantly learning from them.
Roisin, very quickly, do you want to just give us some insights from you around how best to use external initiatives and guidance?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think one key thing that I would like to call out, just to really highlight how important these sectoral initiatives and guidance are, is that I was just got back. I'm in the Sao Paulo office today. I flew back from Sinop in Mato Grosso last night, and in the Mato Grosso area, I was speaking with farmers and our colleagues that are running the warehouses and operations there yesterday, and they're just showing us the logistical challenges unrelated to sustainability, just the challenges of getting grains from the middle of a country, thousands of kilometers to a port. And just that by itself is a big challenge, especially when you don't have, in some cases, you don't have sealed roads, there's no railway. You're talking, yeah, as Hilary mentioned as well, you have a lot of basic logistical challenges in a country like this. And so that just goes to show that doing these kinds of things on our own is really not feasible. Trying to set and implement DCF, emissions reduction targets, all the work that we're trying to do on helping our company to be sustainable while remaining commercially viable and competitive and a forwards-looking company. There's no way that we can do that on our own, let alone the fact that, of course, alignment is very important from an external stakeholder perspective to be able to measure progress and to have common sort of frameworks for evaluating progress and comparing companies along the way. So just I think that's a pretty good highlight of why it's important and the importance that it is to a company in the grains and oilseed sector in South America. And there are similar cases for other commodities and other geographies around the world. I'd say I might leave it there to keep it short and keep time for Q&A. I think Hillary covered a lot of the main good things that AFI and others are putting out there.
Okay, thanks very much. Let's turn to audience questions. Our most up-liked, unsurprisingly, concerns around the Amazon soy moratorium. I wondered, Roisin and Hillary, what are your corporate position on that? Hillary.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, so McDonald's was a huge supporter of the Amazon soy moratorium when it was launched in around 2006, 2007. We encouraged our suppliers at that time to come to the table and support the Amazon soy moratorium. We know that it's considered a great case study in terms of a nature positive production win-win, where it effectively eliminated significant amounts of deforestation as relevant for the soy industry. However, as we also know, the Amazon soy moratorium right now is being reviewed and looked at very closely. And that is through 2 different Brazilian states who are taking a deeper look into what is considered acceptable to those Brazilian states as relevant for policies or actions like the Amazon soy moratorium. So we're following that very closely at McDonald's, but that is an ongoing legal discussion and looking forward to continue following that.
Thanks, Hillary. Roisin, what's COFCO's position?
Thanks, Ian. I think it will not come as a surprise that I can't really publicly comment on our position. I think we remain a signatory on this day. That's the case, and we hope that will continue to be the case. But yeah, it's not a topic that we can discuss publicly today, unfortunately.
Okay, right, thank you. Right, Jeff, question about the SBTI process. Given that the final flag target guidance is not yet released, how are you working with the flag team, and will SBTI align with AFI on the interim milestones in the future? Jeff.
Thanks for the question, Ian. We continue to work closely with SBTI. We supported them with some advice on the establishment of the no deforestation commitment requirement at the beginning as they were setting up flag. In November, we published a guidance document, an explainer on no deforestation commitments under SBTI flag to help companies navigate some of the questions that were coming up around, for instance, what commodities should be covered by these commitments, and what are the criteria for demonstrating that a commitment has been met. Of course, that guidance is owned by SBTI, so we can provide advice, but ultimately, the SBTI materials are the determinative reference. But we're continuing to work very closely with SBTI to provide guidance on implementation and validation as the commitments that have been set and continue to be set under flag continue to grow.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, a question on KPIs. Obviously it's within the AFI framework, the importance of setting quantitative KPIs, but it's obviously been quite challenging. So, Hillary, how have you gone about, what have you found to be most effective in terms of quantitative indicators of progress that you've been able to measure and track?
Thanks, Ian. This is a little bit tricky, as we all know, for the reason that I mentioned previously, which is methodologies change over time, right? Because technology changes over time and what is possible changes over time. So if you look at our purpose and impact report, we have pages and pages of footnotes, which are kind of saying this is specifically how we came to this supporting deforestation-free supply percentage that we're reporting out there. And when you're looking at the 5 different commodities, there's going to be different approaches based on what is possible. Are we using certifications? Are we working with suppliers and landscape level initiatives? Are we doing geo-monitoring as related to beef? And all of that has footnotes on footnotes on footnotes to make sure that we're clear about our methodologies. But there are I think what is most important there is that you are progressing and that you are transparently talking about where are the challenges and how are you working with suppliers and by extension as well producers in increasing towards whatever your target date is, 2025 or 2030. But in our case, we take a commodity by commodity approach and constantly think about, okay, where's the risk for this commodity as related to deforestation or ecosystem conversion? What is the meaningful action that we can do now? What is the meaningful action that we're expecting to be able to do in 2-3 years, et cetera, and grow since 2015 until now.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Question about the talking about these things in theory and working on the ground, and question from Lanash Thanda pointing out the disconnect or risk of disconnect between this sort of conversation and actually what's happening on the ground. Roisin, you actually are on the ground at the moment. So how do you work at COFCO to kind of avoid and mitigate these disconnects?
Sure. I haven't seen the question in the Q&A. Is it just like a overall connecting things happening in, say, head office in Europe, America to what's happening? Okay.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's just disconnected and could be kind of, I guess, in theory and in practice, there's been a history of disconnect between those two things. How are you working to ensure that they're continually improving on that?
Great, thanks for the clarification. Yeah, so I think this is a good example, right? Like making sure that people across the team, whether in the sustainability team or between sustainability team and risk, treasury, origination, commercial, legal departments, that they're all talking to each other. Despite the carbon emissions involved of flying from one side of the world to another, it really makes all the difference. So hopefully we can offset that in the work that we do. But yeah, I think for us, just staying connected to what is happening, how for example, COFCO being a trader, that we are buying directly from producers, from cooperatives, we have the opportunity to be talking to them. So making sure that we are talking to them, that we talk to our colleagues who are talking to them every day to understand, before even going in with any kind of ask, just understanding what is their day-to-day like, where are the challenges, where are the opportunities, and understanding that means that we can then adapt something. We might know what we need and what we want, but if we can then readjust that to make sure that it is actually addressing those challenges and opportunities, that goes a really long way. Sorry if that then sounded like a really theoretical answer, but for example, on this providing incentives points, okay? So as I said, we're looking really hard into this. We know, given the current dynamics, this is absolutely key. We are doing well on our targets. We are, as I said, 99% deforestation conversion free for soy purchased in Brazil last year. We're quite feeling confident, and that's another reason we're here discussing with the team this week, is making sure that we're on track for reporting at the end of the year and what do we need to report next year. But in the medium to long term, this is something we absolutely need to address. And so piloting solutions that exist for those incentives, again, trying to stay concrete, piloting things like finance models, facilities that have been created with inputs from the UN Environment Programme, from Global Environment Facility, and from other banks that have been clearly created as a specific facility to be able to offer farmers a lower interest rate. This is something that we are looking into and to pilot. There are many other examples out there. There's initiatives around how do you, similar, using sort of green finance that is out there, that could be public, could be catalytic finance, could be more philanthropic, that's out there, and linking that to the company's finance structure and operations for in making sure that any expansion of commodity production is on degraded areas, and making sure to cover that cost if you're trying to incentivize that and make sure that it is cheaper. So one of the conversations I was having yesterday is really trying to understand, has it worked? Is it cheaper now for this under this program? Which programs work and that makes it cheaper to, if you want to expand your production, to produce on degraded pasture lands, as opposed to being still more expensive than clearing new areas of forest? So I hope that helps give some sense, but it's the more concrete you get, the more variety there is. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Jeff, what is the AFI's view on this disconnect challenge?
Thanks, Ian. Well, I think it's important that there not be a disconnect. And what that means is that we need to find a way to align and converge between sort of the global view of what a no deforestation supply chain looks like and what the realities are on the ground in different places. So the global view, right, companies should make a commitment. They're going to report a percentage every year. That percentage should be as close as possible to 100% deforestation free. The view from the ground is that there's a wide variety of different scenarios. If you look at the different types of producers, sourcing arrangements, intermediaries across different commodities in the world. What we try to do through the AFI is bring those two together. And that involves listening closely and learning from the experience of those different production models in different places, talking to traders and other intermediaries. And for instance, addressing scenarios where within the framework of a no deforestation supply chain, it is okay to have some suppliers with whom you're working with actively to address issues or non-compliances. We don't ask buyers to immediately disengage where there's non-compliance, because that typically doesn't solve the problem. So that's one scenario. So there needs to be a pathway back to compliance, and we want to spell that out in sufficient detail so that it's clear to different supply chain actors what that looks like. In other cases, there may be gaps around being able to demonstrate full traceability to the plot level, because sourcing is done from smallholders through local intermediaries. And so it may be necessary to assess impact or engage at the level of a community or an area. There's good examples of that happening in sectors like palm oil and cocoa. So all of these local examples, all these local cases need to be rolled up and reflected in a global framework so that companies can say, yes, we're pursuing a no deforestation supply chains, but yes, it includes sufficient context and nuance to actually address these scenarios on the ground. And that's what we want to be able to communicate through the framework. And this is also especially important because companies now that are thinking about possibly setting commitments are giving them greater scrutiny. Legal teams are reviewing them and so forth. They're not going to commit to something that by the letter of the statement, they don't think they can really meet. And so it's important that we kind of accommodate those realities. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to continue to grow ambition and bring more companies into this important endeavor.
Thanks, Jeff. Hilary, quick question for you. Following up a bit on the KPIs question, what do you find that's effective in motivating suppliers or producers not to convert and deforest? Even if it is legally possible in certain circumstances. What works well in that circumstance?
Oh, Ian, isn't that the question? Isn't that what we're all trying to figure out? And Racine, I think you gave some fantastic examples. Thank you. So one thing that we're thinking about is our sustainable procurement policies. So we have procurement policies that are related to all 5 commodities, as I mentioned. Those procurement policies are drafted and revised in partnership with our suppliers. And our suppliers are those who are really buying those commodities at the end of the day and are working close and hand in hand with producers. So we want to make sure that we have face time with our suppliers. We have significant conversations with our suppliers about where we're trying to go. And also we talk about like how we're trying to grow with suppliers and with producers. So right now McDonald's is on a historic growth trajectory. We've never grown this much at scale in the past 70 years that we've been around. We're looking forward to growing a continuous 70 plus years down the path. And our suppliers know that when they're with us and they're working on our procurement policies, including around sustainability, that they're growing with us. And we want to keep increasing the ability to bring producers into the fold. I've had suppliers come up to me that are saying, right now McDonald's is not prioritizing XYZ as related to sustainability in my particular region or my particular country. What is it that I can do to ensure that I can be proactively seeking out your work on deforestation before this is really expected of me? And the reason why is because suppliers see it as, if McDonald's is asking you to do whatever it is as related to deforestation, that might be coming to you 5 years down the line, and they want to be proactively prepared. And we can kind of see that into a certain degree with the European Union deforestation regulation, which was previously mentioned. In terms of producers and how do you bring the producer along, this is the core element that we're trying to tackle right now as related to our theory of change. Like I said, oftentimes we're at least 5 positions back from that producer, but we do look for these open spaces. So where are producers that we can talk in partnership with our suppliers, with producers, and really make sure that everyone knows what are our procurement policies, what are we working towards, why are we working towards those things? So really rooted in our theory of change. So recently, when I was on the ground in Uruguay for the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef Conference last October and November, we were talking particularly with this. We had an invite open to absolutely everyone in terms of producers and ranchers, and work through what is our deforestation-free beef procurement policy? What questions are there? Who doesn't know about it and wants to know about it? I printed out various copies so that we could talk through this, in addition with not only our suppliers, but also our franchisees down there. We also have flagship farmers. So you might have seen this already. Flagship farmers are essentially farmers within the McDonald's system who are modeling best practices. Those flagship farmers are fantastic models of sustainable and resilient transformation in their local farm, but also in their local communities as well. I encourage you to check that out. And then I will also add that, and I think this is important, if you walked around McDonald's headquarters here in Chicago, you would see that a lot of farmers are actually within McDonald's Corporation. So the 3 people that I probably work most closely with, every single one of them is a rancher or a farmer. And I think the reason why that's important is because we're constantly having the producer perspective at the table when we're thinking through what makes sense, what is possible. But I will say that we are looking to grow. How do we even further strengthen our connection with the producer moving forward, because they are so essential to that sustainable transformation that we want.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Quick question for you, Roisin, on traceability. What are the challenges around really getting to grips with traceability in your supply chains? We've talked a bit about the number of intermediaries sometimes between where you are and on the ground. I guess you're nearer than McDonald's is, but how do you achieve the traceability challenges, or how do you overcome them?
Yeah, it's extremely different depending if we're talking about coffee from Vietnam and Indonesia, or cotton or soy or corn from Brazil, and even then from Brazil or from Argentina, entirely different. Definitely, it's much. I would say our traceability team will kill me for saying this, but I think it's much easier for us than McDonald's or retailer, like with so many more intermediaries. For us, it's primarily, depending on the commodity, primarily we're buying from a producer or a cooperative in the grains and oilseeds business. So there's not really any clear answer. I think in Brazil it's really different. They have polygons for farms that are freely available on a government database. In Argentina, you do not have that. So and it's not common practice to ask for these polygons unless it's linked to historically. When they have been asked, it was always linked to a certification, always came with a premium. So to go around and ask for that now, because you want it for everything and you're not necessarily offering anything linked, or not offering anything, but that it's not directly linked to a certification or a premium, it's entirely different. So I know we don't have a whole webinar on this topic, but Jeff, I don't know, I know you've worked on traceability a ton over your lifetime, so I don't know if you have any way to have a more succinct response.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Do you want to comment briefly on the traceability challenges?
Sure. I mean, I think traceability is a challenge for most companies that sit anywhere in the supply chain downstream of the first buyer. And I think what sometimes gets complicated about this is this is treated as kind of a monolithic challenge. I think what can help is to for companies to sort of break that apart and look at the nature of the challenge and what options they have to respond to it. And this is part of what we're encouraging, getting at with the publication of short-term milestones and action plans. So in some cases, the traceability challenge is much closer to the ground. With beef, for example, animals may transfer through 2 or 3 ranches before they get to the final fattening farm, before the animal goes to slaughter. That's one type of traceability challenge that requires one type of response. In other cases, the challenge is much further downstream in the supply chain. For instance, when companies are sourcing palm oil derivatives, or when they're purchasing certified mass balance products that don't actually provide full traceability back to origin, or they're trying to address commodities that are embedded in animal feed for the production of chicken or pork, for instance. So we encourage companies, as they're reporting on progress and also identifying their forward steps, to try to be specific about the nature of the traceability challenges and the responses. This is what allows company stakeholders, investors, and buyers to really sort of understand the nature of the issue and what the company is doing to address it.
Thanks, Jeff. Regina, I see you want to come back in, but I do want to ask a further question to both of Hilary and Roisin before we get to sort of wrapping things up. We've had lots of questions about EUDR, just showing that the big issues just keep coming. Hilary, just very quickly, where is McDonald's in terms of its EUDR, European Union Deforestation Regulation? Where are you on that at the moment?
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, so we are working very closely with our suppliers to support compliance by the end of the year. We have frequent calls about this, have worked with suppliers in order to run pilots as well, and looking forward to ensuring that we're fully on track by the end of 2025.
Thanks, Hilary. Roisin?
Yeah, so we've kind of established our internal due diligence system, which was like the whole administrative paperwork side that's not very visible, but was a lot of work. So we've completed that and it's ready. And then we're just piloting on the more logistical side of things. Obviously, segregated flow is not easy. So we just completed a new pilot last week, I think. And so we're continuing to trial. This said, just a comment, it's obviously really difficult to continue to push for preparation and pilots and things when there has been so much uncertainty, and the markets are, in terms of being able to have customers wanting to buy these pilots or setting the market to say that this is coming. That's something that's a big challenge, I think, for the preparation, is given there's been a delay once, it puts a lot of doubts and questions in people's minds, especially in people who are not at all familiar with this topic or where it's come from. They're just, in their busy day-to-day in the commercial areas of or risk or legal areas of the company. So I would say the not only the fact there's been delay, but also the recent happenings with the CSRD as well has made it quite challenging to continue the right speed that we need for the preparation. But otherwise, it's going fine. It's going ahead.
Thank you. Okay. As we close, I'm conscious that we are coming towards the end of our time. I'd like all the panelists to give us a little bit of information as to how they are going to maintain momentum from now through to 2030. We've snapshotted quite well, I hope, how things are right now, but how are you going to maintain momentum through to 2030? Hilary?
Thanks, Ian, and thanks again for the opportunity to speak. So for us, we're going to do a few things. We're going to continue to report out annually. You'll see our Purpose and Impact Report reporting on our progress every year. We're going to continue to work in partnership, knowing that it's only through partnership that we can make sure that we land these big, lofty, ambitious goals. We're going to continue to call others in. So again, I urge you, if you do not have your own commitment on deforestation or your own internal goals right now, and you need some support, please reach out. We do need to call others in to make sure that this is a durable, sustainable transformation. It can't be only a few companies or a select group of companies acting. And I think, like I've mentioned before, one of the most important elements is we're going to continue to be flexible in what is the best approach, because this is going to change over time as technology changes over time and as partnerships change over time. I think one last thing maybe to lead with is landscape level initiatives. This is something that we are working on, a growing portfolio of landscape level initiatives. And Rashina also mentioned a few on her side of things. This is how we can drive impact on the ground in partnership with producers and in partnership with suppliers in regions that are considered high priority regions for us. So you'll see moving forward a growing portfolio in terms of McDonald's. And I think the last thing is we firmly believe that we have to get nature in general right. And the reason why is because our 2050 climate target depends on us getting the nature elements correct and to an adequate amount of sustainable transformation. Our business depends on nature, as do all of our businesses. Our people depend on nature, and suppliers, our producers. We all depend on the functioning of ecosystem services. And so we're just going to keep coming back to that as that roots us from 2025 on to 2030. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Roisin, same question to you. What are you doing or what will you be doing to maintain momentum to 2030? Briefly, if you would, we're getting quite close to our end.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, very briefly. So yeah, also echo the thanks for the invitation today, and thanks AFI and Innovation Forum for setting up the webinar. I think three things. So one big focus for me since I joined the company a year ago is how to embed sustainability into the company. So it's not about growing the team, it's how do we work with the different departments to understand what are all the different areas of the company that this can be better understood, opportunities and challenges to kind of spread sustainability through the company. Concrete examples of that: sustainability linked finance with finance and treasury, and then also getting better working with the commercial team to more proactively seek, identify, secure commercial opportunities linked to sustainability. Second thing, sectoral initiatives. As I mentioned, there's no way that we can do this by ourselves. So continuing to put time and energy and support into sectoral and multi-stakeholder initiatives that are working on this agenda. And then the third, I think it's been a good theme of today's webinar, which I'm very happy about, is just very much staying conscious to minimize the disconnect between things being discussed in boardrooms and what people are discussing in the field.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Jeff, finally to you. So what is AFI going to be doing to maintain momentum through the year and this year and through till 2030?
Great. Well, I've been really inspired by this conversation. I think it's highlighted how these issues are really core to business and to the future and resilience of companies like McDonald's and Costco, and also how companies can approach this in a way that links the field perspective with the global business perspective. So in that context, our role continues to be to provide clarity and alignment through our guidance that's reflective of the types of nuances and learnings that have been spotlighted today. In that vein, we're going to be publishing some additional detail elaborating on the statement that we published in May that I summarized today, addressing some of the present questions around target dates, implementation, and the future course post-2025. So we encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter so that you can learn about these and other AFI resources as they're released. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Jeff. We're out of time. Many thanks to our panel for their insights today, and to you all for all your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them. Tried very much to get to various themes that were being raised. I hope we answered enough for you. I will make sure those are all shared with the panelists so they will see all the questions that you have put to us. Many thanks to Accountability Framework Initiative for their support of this webinar. We'll be in touch with the webinar recordings in due course for you to share or listen to again. For now, I hope you found this webinar useful. I've been Ian Welsh. Thank you for joining us, and goodbye.
Thanks a lot.